Silicon Valley has profited handsomely from this pandemic as tens of millions of Americans are really struggling. Tens of millions of Americans have lost their jobs, John. They've lost their healthcare benefits as a result of that. Congress has shown an unwillingness to really do what it takes to offer real economic and financial relief in the next stimulus bill, and that's terrifying. But Bloomberg Business did speak to one of these billionaires. And although this individual has not been identified, and you'll know why once I read you some of his quotes, it just gives you an idea of how callous they are and how they live in a completely different world and know and accept that people are struggling and they just don't care. So before I get to those comments, I wanted to, open the floor to you.
Yeah, I mean, I love some of the elements you have upcoming, so I'm not gonna spoil that, and it seems to fit into one of your favorite themes. But yeah, the entire thing about the hearing, at least, I did want to comment briefly on that because, look, as you pointed out, and I think I'm reading you right. If the hearing had been productive, God only knows what would have ended up happening. Probably nothing good because we don't trust the vast majority of people in there. None of the Republicans, almost none of the Democrats. That said, like this is what government is at this point. With Trump in the White House and with a divided Senate and House, this is like the best case scenario, I guess, is the Republicans come in, they pass massive tax cuts, and then government becomes a farce for the rest of the period. Like we got the Democrats in the House, so now they call the hearings, but now the hearings are just, let's have Candace Owens come in and talk. Let's ask questions about Diamond and Silk. They're all ridiculous sideshows, both the individuals, but also the use of the time in the hearing. And that, to someone who believes that the time of government should be spent in trying to improve the lives of working Americans, is a huge loss. But for the Republicans, they can go in there and play card games. They don't care. They got what they wanted. Now it's just pump the brakes, just waste time, make sure that nothing passes. They already got everything out of government that they require. Anything else would just be spending that theoretically could result in higher taxes that they want to avoid. And so the entire thing just becomes them wasting our time to make sure nothing gets done, and vice signaling to their fans that I believe the same nonsense conspiracy theories you do. I hate the same people you do, so reelect me to waste another 4 years.
Yeah, it's so depressing. It really is. And we should feel like hearings like this aren't a waste of time, but they typically do end up being a waste of time, especially since Mark Zuckerberg has testified before subcommittees how many times and what happened after that. He's more powerful and more wealthy today than he was back then. And just to remind you all, the CEOs who took part in this today included Jeff Bezos with Amazon. You have Apple, Google, Microsoft. Those are the 4 major tech companies who took part in this hearing. But let's hear from one of the other billionaires. I actually don't know who this billionaire is because Bloomberg Business did not identify this person, but we do know that this is a white male. That's all they said to identify him. And he said in the beginning of the pandemic, when Bloomberg reporter Max Abelson spoke with him, quote, "What the F? I'm not worried," meaning I'm not worried about the pandemic. "I'm sure I already have it. What do I care?" Well, it's easy to say that when you're not worried about being able to provide yourself the proper health care if you do get sick. But let me give you more from this callous billionaire. Later, when the situation actually became more serious and more Americans began seeing COVID-19 as a real threat, the billionaire said the following: "Some people are gonna die, but it's old people. And if they do, it's okay. Not that it's okay, this isn't that bad." Okay. As Abelson reports, he seemed to know how cold and disconnected that sounded. Some billionaires take pleasure in playing up nasty reputations, but this one considers himself to be thoughtful, generous, lucky, and friendly to his workers. I asked him if he talked to the boss of one of the biggest banks, JP Morgan Chase and Co.'s Jamie Dimon, and he sneezed. And this is what he said: "Now, if you're on a bus and you start sneezing, everybody gets upset," he said. I asked if he actually takes the bus. "No," he replied.
What could a bus cost? $10? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Also, it's ridiculous, and I know you've pointed that out with Cooperman and all that, but isn't it crazy that like if you're a billionaire, you just get interviewed just for being a billionaire? Like that's all it takes. But yeah, he said, it's just gonna be old people, so who cares? And that's certainly callous, but that's every Fox host for the last 4 months saying we shouldn't worry about it because it's only the older people. And then look, just earlier today, I believe it was, Vance Ginn, the chief economist for the Texas Public Policy Foundation, he tweeted, among other things he was noticing about coronavirus in Texas, is it only kills old people and Hispanics. Now he eventually took down the tweet because wow, but he felt comfortable enough to tweet that initially.
This is how they
sort of
think.
quasi-apology
This is how they think. This is how they think. That's why I actually do like that they're getting interviewed, because this is really what they think. Let me give you more from this Bloomberg billionaire. And I say Bloomberg because he was interviewed on Bloomberg. I mentioned the other rich people were scrambling to protect their health. Some were securing special access to virus tests and experimental drugs, if not their own ventilators. And here's what the billionaire said. I could get my hand on a test, he said. He told me his peers were quietly inquiring about reserving beds at private hospitals in case they got sick. He had connections to the boards of the best hospitals, but said he'd call in favors only for the people closest to him. And this is how you have two Americas. And by the way, he totally minimized the problem of inequality in the country. He's like, we've always had inequality. And the reporter was like, it's gotten a lot worse. And he's like, no, it hasn't gotten worse. It just seems like it's gotten worse because of social media. No, it's definitely gotten worse. We have like 800 billionaires in the country, and 50% of the US couldn't afford a $400 emergency before the pandemic. I'm sure the issue is much worse now. By March 23rd, New York City's case count was rising by thousands each day. People at Rikers Island jail fell sick, and the city hospitals were running out of masks and gloves. The US was threatening to become a new hub for the virus. When I spoke to my billionaire that day, I thought he might be scared or sad. Instead, he was irritated. Everybody's working remote and realizing remote sucks, he said. I asked how it was different from the 2008 financial crisis. I have to make individual calls. It's so hard. It's so hard to deal with all these things. You can't get 5 people in a room. Anyway, that's what we're dealing with when it comes to billionaires in this country. They clearly do not care about the pain and suffering of everyone else because they've benefited from it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.